The Fox NFL analyst, Greg Olsen.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show,
What's up,
big
guys?
dog. We'll come to you
How we doing?
first. We're good, man. We're about to come to you right now. I have a question for you, brother. Is this the year?
Yeah.
Russell Wilson, your former teammate, finally wins MVP.
You know, you don't say this much about a guy like Russ, right? I mean, he's regarded across the league as one of the, top 5, 10 players in the league, an elite level guy. But you can almost make the argument that he's underrated. I think the fact that he's been able to achieve what he has, I think I read something the other day, he's like second or third fastest guy to 100 wins. I mean, what he's been able to do from a production standpoint, and again, the number one aspect of production is wins and losses. I mean, you can't argue what he's done. I think what happened to Russ was early in his career, because the defense and the Legion of Boom and what they were building there got so much credit, and deservingly so. I think people took for granted the winning and just assumed it was because of the other side of the ball. And when they went through that big transition on defense and they lost, Cam Chancellor and Richard Sherman and, Cliff Averill retired, they kept winning. They never had a rebuild. And I think that's a credit to him. I think every year he's got to be a guy that's in the running. The fact that he hasn't gotten an MVP vote over all these years is hard for me to believe. But yeah, I mean, you would be hard pressed to find a better guy to be around. I saw it firsthand last year, and he checks every box.
Oh, but does he check the box of winning the MVP this year? I heard a lot of great, loving, glowing remarks about Russell Wilson as a teammate.
Greg.
Wrong show. Wrong show.
Greg tried us.
Listen, why should he not win the MVP this year? Listen, his team's got to win 12 plus games. They got to win the division. They got to make a run in the playoffs, right? There's a million other categories. But when you just talk about the production and the consistent performance of Russell Wilson year in, year out, week in, week out, yes, he's an MVP caliber player. Whether or not he's won it before is irrelevant.
Oh, okay. That was stronger.
We got a little strong. Greg started working out in between his first and his second take. He got a little stronger. I like it.
Went from teammate to brotherhood on that one. Okay, let me just come in as strong as I can. No, he's not going to win the MVP this year. No, he's not going to get a vote again this year. And I'm going to use Russell Wilson against Russell Wilson. This is the reason why. I am a fan of Russell Wilson and his game. However, when you ask me a question explicitly about the MVP, I got to go back to Russell Wilson's resume. You know this, Greg. You played in the league forever. In the beginning of the year, all the voters are trying to get the names, the attention as a player of who we're going to vote for. But then in the second half of the year, they're like, all right, it's time to place our votes. Here's the problem with Russell Wilson. He always raises his hand and they say, who? Russell Wilson? Okay. And when it's time to get the pen and finally get the ballot out and write his name down, they say, why? And then they start to look down and realize he's not the same player in the second half of the season as he is in the first half of the season. Oh, by the numbers, you can see the completion percentage, yards per game, touchdown to interception ratio, passer rating just drop year after year for Russell Wilson. I'm going to need you to explain that coming up shortly. The wins stay the same. I give you that. September, 3-0. Then December, 4-1. You see that. But when you see the completion percentage go from 76 to 64, the passer rating go from 139 to 91, you start to say, okay, the team is winning, but the formula for success is changing. You can't win the MVP in that regard. So if Russell Wilson can be the same Russell Wilson he is week 1 to week 9, after that, week 10 to week 17, week 18 this year, fine. Russell Wilson will get a vote. But never in his career have we seen him finish what he started.
Greg, you see what I have to deal with now. It's very tiring. It's very tiresome. Somehow I'm retaining my hair through all the stress. Greg, let me say what you can't. You're an analyst. I'm an opinionist. You have to be nonpartisan. I'm allowed to be as biased as I want. This is the year Russell Wilson wins the MVP.
Oh, okay.
And I've come out on a limb and said that this is the year Russell Wilson wins the MVP before the season started because, to my dog Greg Olsen's point, Russell Wilson has always been good. He doesn't get enough credit. You could argue Russell Wilson is underrated. I wouldn't lead that argument, but I would co-sign it like Greg said. The kicker is, and Greg, I can't wait for you to speak on this because you were actually there last year. The only reason Russell Wilson didn't win MVP last year, Sel, is one, Aaron Rodgers had a freakazoid season.
Yeah, it's hard.
But two, Russ tailed off toward the end of the season. Again, Greg will know better than I. I'll let him speak to that shortly. But Russ will learn from what happened last year. Any high-functioning human being will learn from their mistakes. Last year, Russ started out 4 touchdown passes, 5 touchdown passes, 5 touchdown passes. But then y'all go to Buffalo, struggle, couple picks. Then the next week, 1 touchdown. Next week, 1 touchdown. And now we're like, Russ, what's going on? The whole narrative of let Russ cook turned into Russ is burning down the kitchen, and us lame analysts ran with that for far too long. I apologize, Greg. So with that being said, Russ will win the MVP this year because he will start fast and he will finish strong, unlike last year when he waned. But now, Greg, my question to you, because you were there, what actually did happen? And why did Russ tail off? Because if he doesn't tail off, he wins this year.
Yeah, so last year was a really interesting year. So early in the year, the defense, by all accounts, was in shambles, right? We started out the year, they really struggled. So there was no choice. They gave the reins to Russ last year and said, you got to go out and score 40. Week 2 against New England, Cam has the best year. Cam was the MVP after that game.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, right, we couldn't play defense. We couldn't stop anybody. And Russ had to throw the ball 40 times a game, throw 4 or 5 touchdowns a game, and we had to win a shootout. Same thing against Dallas, across the board. The first half of the season, there was no restrictions. The offense was wide open, and it was Russ, carry us. We're trying to figure out the pass. We had just gotten Jamal Adams. They were trying to figure out how to, he's an elite level player, trying to put him in the system. No offseason, limited training camp, right? So the defense was finding their way. And then all of a sudden, the defense kind of found their pace. The old mantra of what Pete Carroll wanted to be, the run the ball, control the clock, no turnovers. Russ had a game or 2 with some turnovers, and everybody panicked. They said, okay, we don't need to force the issue anymore with Russ throwing the ball 100 times. Let's get back to the Seahawks way, play great defense. Our defense is picking it up now this second half of the season. We don't need to put all the pressure on the offense. And as a result, the handcuffs kind of started to get put back on offensively, and it's not a mystery why his production and his play went down. When he had the freedom early in the year, knowing you could throw 5 picks, 10 touchdowns, it didn't matter. You're our only chance of winning through the air. To be able to play with that freedom within the system was why he was the MVP through the first quarter to half of the season. All of a sudden now, the defense is better. We need to run the ball more. Russ has thrown a couple picks. We panic. And we weren't the same offense. We weren't running the same schemes. We weren't running the same kind of high-octane bombs over your heads. But you saw last week, week 1, this new Shane Waldron system now is not the system of the old. I'm not there anymore. It seems to me that they've said, all right, Shane, we trust you to have a little more and we saw he's bombing, Tyler Lockett's catching Willie Mays passes over his head. That was the offense we saw last year. You're right. We need to see it 17 weeks. I'm not there to know what the conversations are in the back end, but that was the struggle we had last year.
Yeah, I'm glad you're trying to explain away last year. Well, Greg, my dog, I do my job. And the years you weren't there, Russell Wilson found himself in that same position. Let's go back 2016. Let's go back 2019. And you felt it as well last year in 2020. So what they say, the first time is a chance, and second time is coincidence, the third time is a pattern. I got a pattern of Russell Wilson not finishing what he starts. Okay, 96 first half in terms of passer rating, 89 second half, 2016. You were in Carolina. 2019, you still weren't there. 116 first half, 97 second half. Oh, you want to know why, Greg, when you get there last year and they're like, Russ, we're going to change this formula up in the second half of the season? Because they have seen this movie before. And this is the problem with Russell Wilson right now, writing the script that he's written before. Somebody else is in town, and they're local, and they got a better script than even you, Russell Wilson. I'm going to tell you who's going to win MVP this year right now after week 1. Matthew Stafford. See, this is the problem. Matthew Stafford going to put up the numbers that Russell Wilson has, but Russell Wilson, you did yourself a disservice this offseason with all that commotion. You lost your jetpack. You know what Russell Wilson's jetpack used to be? Being a good guy. No commotion. Go Hawks. And all that positivity. Now, I'm watching Matthew Stafford put up the numbers, but also he has the good guy story. Because I saw his wife, actually, they showed 2 wives, but the real wife, they showed the real wife having podcasts and talking about, Matthew Stafford has resurrected his career. His joy is back. You can see him smiling. Oh, he's loving football once again. With those numbers and that storyline in Los Angeles, sorry, Russell Wilson, the fact that you can't finish what you start has now come back to haunt you in full because Matthew Stafford even stole your storyline.
Here's the interesting thing, though, Sel, and I might be listening to my dog Greg a little bit here, is that...
Okay, what?
Is it an indictment on Russell Wilson that he ain't necessarily winning the MVPs?
Okay.
Because if somebody puts handcuffs on you unwarranted or at least unnecessarily or at least you didn't desire them, then of course your numbers are going to go down. Now, Russ struggled against the Bills, so I do understand how after struggling versus the Bills, hey, you know what? Let's just make sure we keep winning these games. But I do not think that based on how Pete Carroll has historically wanted to play the NFL game of football, run the ball, defense, win it. Remember, Pete Carroll is a defensive-minded coach. It doesn't necessarily lend Russ to winning an MVP. So I could understand the struggles of last year. Everything got convoluted in narrative for him. When Russ said at the beginning of last season, I don't just want to vote, I want to win the whole thing. Because in narrative for him, then we were all like, oh, yeah, Russ does need to win the whole thing. Now Russ has been quiet about his MVP desires this season. So the narrative will look completely different. I think Russ will quietly have one of his statistically best seasons. I think Russ will quietly throw over 45 touchdown passes, at least 40-plus touchdown passes. And I think Russ will silently win the MVP award through his play as opposed to through his voice.
Oh, that's interesting. So he's going to quietly do all those things, and Matthew Stafford is going loudly in his performance and his great team and his performance out here in Los Angeles is going to take that award from him. And it's okay, Russell Wilson. You won. I always tell you that, Acho, when I went to my therapist and he brought me down to crocodile tears, he just looked at me simply and said, Marcellus, you won. Russell Wilson has won, but he's not going to win the MVP. And that's okay in this world. Johnny Depp has never won an Oscar, and he is a great actor. Ed Norton never won an Oscar. Great actor. Robert Downey Jr., and you always bring him up, Acho. Has he won an Oscar? Matt Damon, that's my dog. He ain't never won an Oscar. Will Smith has never won an Oscar. Russell, you ain't gonna never win the MVP, but it's okay, because you won. Tears.